We have been studying on Sunday night all about hope. And we started out by just reminding ourselves that sometimes Satan, this world, even ourselves, will talk ourselves into saying that there is no hope. Things are just too bad. There's no hope for sinners. There's no hope for this country. There's no hope for this world. But is there always hope in God? Yes, we can never say that. We can never say it's all over, there is no hope. That just leads to depression and leads to quitting. It leads to all kinds of problems, and that's not where God is. God knows the timing of everything. He knows what's available, and He always says, come, right? There is hope in Him. And then on a more personal note, we've been looking at these issues. Is the captor too strong? Is the sin in my life too strong? I can never shake loose of it. Is this issue that I have, or this temptation I have, too strong? It just holds me captive. That's not where God wants us to be, is it? There is hope. If He can get Israel out of Egypt, can He set you free from your sins? If He can forgive your sins, can He get you away from the power of that sin? Absolutely. How about the obstacles? Can sometimes the obstacles be too big? You know God wants you to do this, but kind of like we looked at this morning, we can be like Moses. It's too big. Can't be done. I can't do it. But is the obstacle ever too big? If He can get people across the Red Sea on dry ground, if He can overcome the obstacles that they face, can He get rid of whatever obstacle we're facing? He will get us up, over, around, under, whatever He needs to do. He'll get us through if He needs to. But He can do anything, can He? Obstacle too big? No. There's always hope. The needs are too great. Like Israel out in the desert. No water, no food, how do you solve that problem? Well, what do? You ask. You pray. You thank God for what He has done. Trust that He's taking you in the right spot. And if you have a need, talk to Him. And in the right time, He will provide the right thing, won't He? He will always. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, right? He will take care of His children. So no, there's always hope, even when the great need is great. Enemies are too powerful, right? They're too strong. I am too weak. We looked at Gideon. Again, Gideon, did he have any strength at all? No, that's why he was milling grain in the middle of the night, right? And hiding it because he had no power. But with God, what was he able to do? Destroy the entire Midianite army. You see, with a few hundred people, he can do it, can he? The enemy's never too big. And how about the errors are just too many? I've made too many mistakes. I've done wrong too many times. I have no hope. Who did we look at last week? Oh, the king of errors, Samson. And if God can use Samson after all that he did or didn't do, can God still use us? No matter what. And that's the thing. We have to get in our head that no, there's never a situation where we just say, God can't use me. God can't meet this need. God doesn't love me anymore. God doesn't. No, there's always hope in God, isn't there? And we just need to go to Him and talk to Him. And there is always hope. Well, tonight we're going to look at the situation where it is just too much. And I think this is a good year to discuss too much. Ever get that feeling like if it's not one thing, it's another? You ever have that just feeling in your life? It's like, okay, this comes along and then it just gets worse. And then this comes along. Still waiting for the cicadas to come. We have hurricane season coming. And worst of all, we've got an election coming up. Those are painful, horrible things. But yeah, I mean, it's just a constant thing, isn't it? And we can feel that way. It's like one thing after another, and you seem like you got it under control, and then another thing comes along, and another thing. And again, at some point, it's easy to get the idea that there's what? There's no hope. There's no hope of it ever getting better. There is no hope. Well, we're going to look at a story tonight that reminds us that no matter what we think, there is always hope. Even when we have given up, there is still hope. The question comes, will we accept that hope? Will we have that positive attitude no matter what's going on and realize there is hope and God is still working? Will we do that? And I thought the best story for this one can be found in the book of Ruth. Everybody please go there. I didn't put it up on the board because I wanted you to guess. And we're going to be studying, who do you think we're going to be studying tonight? Naomi. Yeah. No, not Ruth. the queen, the Mara, the queen of quit, right? She is the one that we're going to be looking at tonight. And it really just comes down to attitude. And what are we going to do when just one thing after another goes bad? So let's get it set up. And really, this is going to be kind of a two-parter. This week, we're going to look at Naomi and how she handled one thing after another going bad. And then next week, we're going to look at a guy by the name of Job as one thing goes bad after another. And kind of compare the attitudes, right? Even though the outcome, funny thing is very much the same. God blesses both of them greatly, doesn't he? But how much more painful was Naomi's experience? Because of just attitude. And that's what we're going to look at. So let's start. Book of Ruth, chapter 1. Now we're going to start in verse 1. And we're just going to read tonight chapter 1 and then a little bit in the last chapter just to kind of see where the blessings come in. So we actually won't be doing a whole lot of looking at the story of Ruth herself and Boaz and all the sleeping at the feet and all that kind of stuff. You know all that story. So we're going to really look at Naomi. And we're going to start in chapter 1, verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled. So not exactly sure when. A lot of people peg this around the time of Samson's judgeship. Could have been before, could have been a little after, we're not quite sure. But it's during the time of the judges that this is going on. When the judges ruled that there was famine in the land. So what is problem number one? No food. Yes. And when you are an agrarian society like they were, is famine a big deal? Huge deal. If there's no water, there is no food, animals start starving, people start starving, and it's just bad. And what do you do about it? What can you do about the weather? Corey, what can you do about the weather? Go someplace with better weather. That's why he lives here rather than Alabama. No, just kidding. I don't know about you, but first tornado, I'm gone. So they had famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah. Why should that sound familiar to people? Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah, right? And so this is the hometown, Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. So in face of famine, they decide to go, and they go to Moab. Now, this was not uncommon back then. In fact, the Moabites are relatives of the Israelites, both related to Abraham. And so it was often that they would kind of cross the lines there. And Moabites weren't too bad overall. They had some periods of time, but so did Israel. Verse 2. And the name of the man was Elimelech, which is a fantastic name. Just say that 3 times fast. Elimelech, Elimelech. It's just a fantastic, fun name to say. Elimelech, the name of his wife was Naomi, which is a beautiful name. And the name of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, not so great, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah, and they came into the country of Moab and continued there. So, they all move. 2 sons, family, they're together, right? Sometimes you got to move, but at least we're what? What could you say then? What was your hope then if you're Naomi? At least we're all together, right? Hold on. Verse 3. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. Okay. So, at least we're all together, and then what? Husband dies. Is that a problem? Yeah, especially back then. Because once the husband dies, what does the widow have? Not much, especially since they left where? They left their home, and even back home, really, the widows didn't have much. But she's got her 2 sons, right? So at least is there hope. At least I have my what? 2 sons. And good things happen. Verse 4. And they took them wives of the women of Moab, which technically they were not supposed to do, right? But they took wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. So things are going okay. Yes, her husband died, famine back in the land, but at least the 2 sons, at least I have my sons. And they are both married, and they can take care of me, and things are going okay. And it goes on for 10 years. Is that good? But could things get worse? Do things get worse? Sometimes we get into this false sense of, it can't get any worse, right? It could. Verse 5. And Mahlon and Chilion died. So, sons died. Both of them. Doesn't say how. I'm guessing it wasn't a car accident. Just throwing that out there. So, I'm not sure. Could have been illness, could have been an accident. It doesn't tell us. All we know is it went from famine, but at least we're all together. My husband died, but at least I have my 2 sons, and they're married. They're taking care of me to what? Now my sons are dead. What does she have? She does not have her home. She does not have her husband, and she doesn't have her 2 sons. What does she have? She has 2 daughters-in-law, and that's the thing. Sometimes we get so focused on what we don't have that we forget what we do have. And she has 2 daughters-in-law, both Moabitesses, but at least they are there, and they were not leaving her. Verse 6. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. So she gets some good news, right? When you're all out of hope, when you're kind of down, isn't it nice to get some good news? And the good news is we can go home. The famine's over, rain is coming, harvest is coming, bread is there, we can at least go home. At least I can go back with my family, right? Extended family, but at least I can go back. So she has that, and she has her 2 daughters-in-law. Verse 7, wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, go, return each to her mother's home. The Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with me, with the dead, and with me. So she says, you don't have to go with me. Why would she do that? Well, kindness. Yeah, could be. They're young, right? They can go and get other husbands and things like that, and why kind of take care of her? But, see, that's the thing. Who had blessed her with these 2 daughters-in-law? God had. God had provided them for her, right? And now she's able to go home. She has these blessings, but what's she's doing? In fact, look at her attitude, verse 9. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Then she kisses them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said unto her, surely we will return with thee unto thy people. Both of them said, we will go. We don't want that. We want to both go. I know Orpah gets kind of a bad, because she does leave eventually, but what was her initial push? We will go with you. God is blessing her with 2 young ladies who are willing to go with her back to her homeland, back to where there's bread, and be with her. But what was Naomi's attitude? Verse 11. And Naomi said, turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? And that's where her mind goes. I have nothing to offer you. I can't give you husbands. There's no hope for you if you go with me. Now, why would her mind go there? Are there no men down in Israel? Is it really up to her to give them new husbands? But she runs to what? Worst case scenario. She goes to, this cannot work. I can't solve this problem for you. But who's the one that solves problems? God does. And yes, it's true. Naomi's not going to be putting out 2 sons. In fact, if they did, verse 12, turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have an husband. And if I should say I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons. If I had hope, and I got married tonight, and I had 2 sons, verse 13, would you tarry for them until they were grown? Would you wait until they're 18 or 19 or 20 years old in order to marry them? There's no hope. You ever done that? Just sit there and do, I'm going to prove to you why there is no hope. because this can't happen, this can't happen, this can't happen, this can't happen, and that can't happen. Therefore, there is no hope. Let me ask you something. Are those the only options? Are those the only options for solving the problem? In fact, you know the story. Does God already have a plan? In fact, my question really is, what was his plan for Orpah? Could have been a great guy. I don't know. Could have had great blessings for him, for her too, and for him. But again, when we sit there and we want to find a reason to say there is no hope, how ridiculous can the scenarios be? Of course, Ruth and Orpah were not expecting her to get married that night, have 2 sons, and then wait 20 years to marry them. That was just stupid. But why would you set that up as the only option for blessing? Because you're pouting. Because you're trying to basically prove to yourself that your idea of no hope, the idea that they should leave, the idea of depression is all deserved. But is it? Who's in control here? God is. Verse 14, and they lifted up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. So Orpah did leave. I'm not going to dump on Orpah. She said she was going to stay. But again, I think she kind of gave in to a little bit of, she doesn't want me. No, I'm not going to wait 20 years for a husband from you. No. And then she decided to go back home. But Ruth said what? No, I'm staying here. Because my hope is not in what you're saying. My hope is not in solving this way. No, yes, that will never happen. But what has that got to do with my life now? What has it got to do with me being happy now? What does it have to do with me living my life now? In fact, look what she says. Verse 15. And Ruth said, behold, thy Naomi says, behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. Now, first of all, why is Naomi telling people to go back to their gods, which aren't gods? Because she has lost what? Hope. Hope in her God. Hope in the one true God. So why don't you just go back to the gods of your people? You might as well, because there's no hope here. And then what did Ruth say? Verse 16. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, or to return from following after you. For whither thou goest, wherever you go, I will go. And where you lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and most importantly, thy God, my God. And I always wonder if nobody's thinking, why would you want my God? Have you been paying attention? Famine? Husband died? Your husband died? Both of my sons died? Why would you want that God? Because what does Ruth know? He's real. He's true. And is there always hope in the one true God? Whatever plan it has, this is the life she has been dealt. This is the life she's been given. And if we've been given this challenge by God, if we've been given this life by God, does God have a plan? And is there always hope? Verse 17. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. And she's even bringing God into that, isn't she? I am pledging this as a pledge to God, that I will be with you till you die. Because that's the life given me. And is there hope in that life? What if she never does get married? Does she care about that? What if she never has children? Does she care about that? No, that's not. Meanwhile, Naomi, what's her feeling? There is no hope. Nothing can be fixed. This is all terrible. And she's looking for reasons it's terrible, right? And can't be fixed. Why would we do that to ourselves? Especially since, what is she doing? She's going back home. Right? There should be at least some excitement here, shouldn't there? She's at least getting something back. At least the famine's over, right? At least we got that one taken care of. And can God meet all of our needs? Because there's hope. And verse 18. When she saw that Ruth was steadfastly minded to go with her, Naomi then left speaking unto her. So, okay, I'm not going to beat this dead horse, we're going. And they went off to Bethlehem, Judah. Verse 19. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem that all the city was moved about them, and they said, Is this Naomi? Now I like that picture. Everybody's, again, should this be a blessed time for her? Should her hope be revived at this point? I am what? How many like home? Home where everybody knows your name, right? Home where people come running. But they looked at her and said, Is this Naomi? Because what had changed? See, when hope leaves us, do people notice that? And instead of leaving, yes, she's leaving because there's famine, but she had hope. She had her husband, she had her sons, and she's going and she'll be back, but now she's back. She says, I have lost everything. But did she ever lose everything? In fact, did she come back empty-handed? She came back with a daughter-in-law that loved her and would care for her, a daughter-in-law that believed in her God. And she had something. And in the face of this, even though the whole city is ready to welcome her back, is ready to embrace her, is ready to say, hey, we're sorry all these bad things have happened to you, but welcome home. This should be a time of great excitement. What does she say? Verse 20. And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara. Anybody know what Mara means? Bitter. Call me bitter. How sad is that? Her identity, her entire identity now is one of bitterness. One of lost hope. Why? And this is the saddest part. Why does she want to call Mara? For the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. Because she looked at her life and all she could see is all the things that she has lost. All the times God did not, in her mind, come through for her. Instead of seeing, has God preserved her? Has God blessed her, again, with a daughter-in-law? Has He blessed her by bringing her home? He's done all of those things, hasn't He? But she refuses to see that and see only that God has dealt with me only bitterly. So it all comes down to what, folks? Mindset. How are we going to look at our life? How are we going to look at the things going on in our life? How are we going to look at the losses, but also the things that we have? And I will tell you, if you spend your whole life thinking of all the things that you have, quote unquote, lost, all the things that you don't have, all the blessings that God did not give you, you will be bitter. You will be depressed, won't you? It's like those people, and I know some of them, all they can think about is all the money they've lost in their life. You never known somebody like that? They're miserable people, aren't they? All they can think about is, oh, I should have invested in that, or I should have done that, or I lost that in the market. If I would have just done that, or this business, and all they worry about is just constantly, you look at them and say, how much money do you have? And it's always a lot more than I got. It's like, hey. It's like, but if all you worry about is the losses in your mind, then, and you say, oh, God has only been bitter to me, then yeah, you're going to be miserable. You will be bitter. Instead of looking around and saying, how has God blessed me? How does the song go? Count your blessings. Name them one by one. If she would have done that all the way home, how much better would she have entered into Bethlehem? Saying, let me tell you how God has blessed me. Here's Ruth. And even then, at that point, did they realize how much God was going to bless them? And again, if we spend all of our time looking backwards, it's easy for hope to leave. Instead of looking forward and saying, what is God going to do tomorrow? You say, well, I may lose something tomorrow. Oh, you may. But is God also going to bless? Has God got it? In fact, what waits for us at the end? Eternal blessing. So It's going to be okay. What have we got to be bitter about? But she says, my name is Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. How does she calculate it? Verse 21. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again. Again. Now, if I'm Ruth, what am I saying? What am I, chopped liver? What do you mean? Empty. I have pledged my life to you. And you're saying I am nothing. And again, we have to remember that, don't we? And how many times has that happened? Where we've lost somebody in our life. How many people do we know who maybe lost somebody in their life? And basically the rest of the life, all they can be fixated on is the one that they lost. And who do they end up losing? All the ones they have, right? And that's not just people, that's everything in our life, isn't it? And we have to focus on the great blessings of God. But she says, I came home empty. Why then call me Naomi, seeing the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? And that's all she could see, is God's affliction, God's pain. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. And that's a little bit of a foreshadowing, because it is during that barley harvest that Ruth works hard, doesn't she? What a blessing she should be to Naomi. Instead, all she wants to be is Mara. Because does she take care of her mother-in-law? Yeah, she goes out in the harvest. She goes out and picks. She goes out and takes up the scraps, right? And she gets the notice of a good-looking man by the name of Boaz. Good dude, isn't he? And gets his attention. And they find out, hey, he's relative, right? And under the law, he could be the redeemer. He could be the one that steps into place and becomes the husband. But there is another guy in the way, one that is before him. So he, I don't know about the shoe thing. It's really very weird. But anyways, the laying down at the feet and the shoe thing are all very strange, but they're customs of the time, right? And here, he takes care of that, and he steps in, and he becomes the redeemer, right? And they get married. But is that even the end of the story? How much does God bless Naomi through Ruth? The one that she called what? Nothing. I've come back empty. What she didn't realize, she actually came back quite full, didn't she? Because what does she get? Let's go to chapter 4, starting in verse 13. And I love the way the story of Ruth ends here. And I think there's a point to it. One, of course, is to understand their place in history. Why is this book even here? But also, it is to show how full were they? How full are we? We don't even know how full we are, do we? We don't even know how much God is going to bless us. Well, how can we say there's no hope when we can't see the future and see all the great things God is going to do for us? You say, yeah, but what about all the terrible things that are going to happen too? Stop it. Stop it. He will take care of it. Don't be Mara. Be blessed. How blessed were they going to be? Verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. Blessings. Now Naomi is a what? Grandma. Isn't that nice? Isn't that a blessing? Now, technically she's an in-law, but it's still good, right? I mean, basically, by what Ruth did is said, I'm going to be your daughter. I'm going to live with you. I'm going to be with you until I die. So she's kind of just a daughter, adopted daughter in many ways. So she now has a grandson. What a blessing. But is that where it stops? Verse 14, and the women said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. I like how everybody else in town got it. And Naomi took the child and laid it in her bosom and became nurse unto it. Which is, again, a strange thing, but that's... I mean, it's amazing that everybody else saw it. So basically, Naomi's fact that she found herself bitter was her choice. The circumstances did not merit it. And how many times in our life do the circumstances not merit losing hope? Do not merit this kind of depression. Do not merit being this bitter. Especially when we can't see what God is going to do through all this. And what was God planning to do? Bring in somebody even better. To give her a daughter-in-law that would be better than 7 sons. Because I can guarantee you, those 7, if she had 7 sons and they lived, I bet they still wouldn't call except on Mother's Day. They probably wouldn't even call then because there were no phones. But they'd go off and live their life, right? But she has somebody living with her. And now Boaz there, she's living with them and being taken care of. What a great plan. Would you agree? And it was a testimony to the entire land that she need not be bitter. She is blessed. But is that the end of the story? Verse 17. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi. And they called his name Obed. You say, well, what's the big deal? Well, Obed happens to be the father of Jesse, who is the father of David. Yeah, that David. King David. So Naomi basically became the great-great-grandmother of a king. How blessed is that? Do I have that right? Or great-grandmother? It's really close. Became the grandmother of a king. And not just any king, the blessed king. The king through which who would come? Jesus Christ the Messiah. In fact, that's what he says next. Now these are the generations of Pharez. Pharez begat Hezron. Hezron begat Ram, and Ram Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. So it goes all the way down through the line of Judah, all the way down to a guy by the name of David. And who is smack dab there in the middle of that line? Ruth, a Moabitess, the daughter-in-law of Mara. No, Naomi. No need to be bitter. And then from David, where does it go? On down to a guy by the name of Joseph, who is the husband of Mary. And actually, you can find David all the way down to Mary, too. Both sides, all descended from David, who was a descendant of Jesse, of Obed, of Boaz and Ruth, the daughter-in-law of Naomi. No hope? Nothing but bitterness from God? Empty? That doesn't sound empty to me, does it? So when we get down, when we feel like, just one thing after another, one heartache after another, one failure after another, one loss after another, we could get to the point where we just say, God has done nothing for me. All he does is take away. Everything's terrible. There is no hope. I want you to remember Ruth and Naomi. Because it may feel that way, but don't let your feelings get in the way of the facts. God blesses, doesn't he? And instead of looking around and saying, I've lost all of this, I want you to look around and say, what has God given me? And be thankful and be blessed for all that he has done. Any thoughts? Questions? Yeah, Derek. Yep. Yeah, we can be the Ruth. We can be the one that says, I'm going to put my trust in God. That's basically what she said. I'm trusting your God. He is my God. And I'm going to trust him. And by doing that, we can bring, hopefully, eventually, come around those who are Mara and bring them back to Naomi, which she was able to do by her faithfulness and by her love. Exactly right. All right, like I said, next week we'll look at another guy who lost a lot of stuff. And it wasn't over 10 years. A couple of days. And we're going to see, he could have done the same thing, couldn't he have? Couldn't he just sat there and said, I am Mara. I am bitter. I'm going to curse God, say he's done nothing for me, and he's taken all this stuff away, and I'm going to die. Could have done that. But what did he decide to do instead? Find out next week. You can read ahead if you want. But and why? Why was he able to do that? And how can we have hope, even in the face of great tragedy? All right? Let's pray.